to VoteProPot-Cast, the award-winning cannabis news podcast brought to you by VoteProPot.com.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of VoteProPot-Cast. Today, we are privileged to have as our guest a pioneer in the world of cannabis, particularly in the medical use of CBD. Albert L. Coles Jr. is the Director of Research at CBD Science, LLC. In 2009, he was part of a team at Harborside Health Center in Oakland, California, that in 2011 was actually the first to successfully treat a case of Dravet syndrome with CBD. He's published many articles since then about the nature, properties, therapeutic uses of CBD, and he's here to discuss that topic with us today. Albert Coles, welcome to VoteProPot-Cast.
Good morning.
So, may I call you Al?
Please.
All right, and you can call me Betty. No, I'm just kidding. That's a dumb joke.
There you go.
That's a dumb joke. So, you're coming to us live today from American Samoa.
Yes.
That is definitely a first for VoteProPot-Cast. How's the weather there?
Always incredible. It's about 85 all the time. And the most wonderful things, one of the most wonderful things about American Samoa is the people. Samoa is called the sacred center for a reason. The people, the warmest, gentlest human beings on earth. Their culture goes back 3,000 years, and there's never been a war on this island. So the people, especially you can see it in the children, are warm, friendly, and it's a very inexpensive place to live.
What brought you to those sunny shores?
Well, basically escaping the United States. I was living in West Marin in Northern California.
Okay.
And the expenses there are extreme. And the people aren't as happy as they are here. So those two things. And the other thing that we're experiencing. That. And what we're experiencing right here is technology. I don't have to live. I'm originally from Connecticut, and I escaped the cold weather. I went to California in 1989, and that was nice, but this is much better. So I basically financial and temper. It's beautiful here.
Well, you have my admiration and a little bit of envy. I don't mind saying, because we're right in the middle of winter here in the D.C. area, and it's not fun.
No, not at all. Plus, the surf is fantastic.
Oh, good. Are you a surfer?
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. Now, your background is in finance and investment, correct?
Yes.
How did you come to be involved with cannabinoid medicine?
Basically, my son had ADHD. This is in 2008.
Okay.
And they wanted to put him on Ritalin. And in finance, I had a deep background in research. And I looked into it and I said, it isn't worth the risk because young children were committing suicide. Wow. And I said, I'm not interested in putting my son at that type of risk. And so I began to explore alternatives. And my son became the youngest individual in California history, 14 years old, to have a qualified medical marijuana card. I had to go to 3 doctors at the help. So he was the first. And basically, and I also at that time got into CBD 2009.
Right.
And was able to grab high CBD actually from the leaves of the Harlequin plant.
Okay.
That was my original source. It was about 1 to 4. And that's how it started.
Wow. Well, and since then you have, tell us specifically about Dravet syndrome. How is that different from other forms of epilepsy?
Basically, it's the most severe thing about it happens to young children. So, until CBD came around, they were subject to having severe pharmaceuticals, and the experiences of that, almost the drugs were worse than the disease itself.
Right.
And you had I don't know if you've ever seen a young child in seizures, but it is something that I unfortunately have seen.
Yes.
And I don't see
Heartbreaking,
again.
yes.
Heartbreaking.
Well, I did see films of the famous case of Charlotte Figge, and
yes.
And the dramatic improvement in her life, that she has a life now, And so that was one of the first stories we covered here on VoteProPot-Cast, and it's kind of been reverberating ever since. Tell us about Jayden.
Yes, so Jayden was a 4-year-old boy in Northern California. And basically, this story came before Figgy, and basically it was 2011. And the original story that I became aware of, he was on the podcast, not podcast, but real life, or what they call, I forget the name of the term, but Weed Wars, run by Harborside. And basically they did a little notion on him, and they had an episode that showed him taking CBD successfully. Mm-hmm. But I knew it was problematic because I had tested the tinctures that they were using. That's what I originally did. I was one of the first persons to really use the labs effectively. I tested it, and I knew there wasn't this significant amount of CBD to make a difference. So basically, the rumors were around in Northern California that I was the guy with the CBD. So his dad contacted me and basically said, "Can you help?" And I said, also, I was familiar with the work of Raphael Machola. Are you familiar with Raphael?
Absolutely, the famous Israeli researcher.
Yes, and he basically was continuing to say in his videos, we have to try CBD for seizures. So basically, it was with his inspiration, knowing his work, I basically jumped into the fore, and we started producing tinctures to help Jayden. So his dad called me, asked me, "Can you help?" And I said, yes, but what I need at that time is I need to operate through a dispensary. So basically he said, I'll set you up with Harborside, and quid pro quo, if you will. I was going to do the work, which I did, and they were going to offer my tinctures.
It occurs to me, hearing this story, that is the timing of it is when we fast forward to the Charlotte Figgy story. She was her parents were advised that there was some promising work and results being done with CBD and Dravet syndrome. It occurs to me that it's your work, among others, that they had gotten wind of. Is that correct?
That's absolutely. And specifically, the team was Stipo Labs, along with a group of concerned individuals at Harborside. Basically, what was unknown at that time was what's called the therapeutic window. We know from Raphael and from general science that it should be good for that type of situation, uncontrollable seizures in young children. But we didn't know the therapeutic window. So basically, that's where I came in, and my expertise really was dose, knowing mg per ml, what it is that you're taking, right. And you can tinctures, and tinctures are wonderful because they can be measured. Okay. And basically, we set about a titration process where we continued to be, along with Harborside, I delivered the tinctures to Harborside, and they would test them, and then we had a basic range. And to let you know, for the first week or so, it's actually for the first 2 weeks, we were unsuccessful. We didn't have enough CBD to deliver the beef. And then finally, when the ratio rose above 1:6, that's 1 part THC and 6 parts CBD, bingo, the seizures went away.
Wow. Okay. The magic formula.
And then what happened is we kept on, we didn't know how we could get that concentrate. And to let you know, where the weed that I had from the leaves of harlequin wasn't potent enough. So basically I was able to buy some Cannatonic 6 at Spark, the dispensary in San Francisco. I was able to buy, it cost me $350 to buy an ounce. Okay. And it was basically 1 to 18, 1 part THC to 18 CBD. Okay. Basically, then I set about extracting that. And so basically we came from 1.6 and continued to titrate up. And it continued to get better and better and better and longer and better effects. And the great things, the thing about this case is, we were under pressure. People didn't believe that we were drug addicts because we were using cannabis and that we were putting children at risk and things of that nature. So we had to do that. And but what was great about seizures and Dravet particularly it was really clear success. Seizures stopped.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, is it getting better? No, the kid's not shaking, and it's lasting for a certain time.
And without some of the horrible side effects of the traditional treatments.
That was the major thing. In all honesty, the pharmaceuticals were making it worse. And you could see the kid, when he was taking them, was in a kind of a stupor from the seizures, and he wasn't responsive at all.
Right.
So not only was, in his case, not only was it that the seizures stopped, but it was also that his life in general became better because on the pharmaceuticals, he was deadwood.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's not the first time I've heard that description, stupor, with regard to that.
And his future was bleak.
And now he's got a life.
That's exactly what happened. And the wonderful thing about the cannabinoids is the effects are cumulative. So basically, he got better and better and lasted longer and longer. And then once we got into the therapeutic window, it continued to progress until we hit a ratio of 1 to 2, 1 to 20. And at that time, that's the window. There is a therapeutic window. If you don't have enough, it's not successful. There's a window of effectiveness, the therapeutic window. And then above that window,
it's no longer therapeutic.
There you go.
Okay. And that brings up an interesting point. Last year, we had Dr. David Behrman on our show, and you're familiar with Dr. Behrman.
Yes.
He spoke, among other things, about the endocannabinoid system, something that I found and still find fascinating. Give us some information about the ECS and why it's so important to understand with regard to cannabinoid medicine.
The endocannabinoid system was first discovered in, I think, 1989 by a researcher in St. Louis, basically, and they wanted to find out how THC works. Raphael Michelin had discovered THC and CBD in the 60s, but they didn't know how it operates. How does this stuff work? And what she discovered was that there's certain receptors in the brain that the THC molecule locks into. That was a revelation because people said, what? You mean something from outside, a phyto,
right?
Something,
a plant.
Yeah, and comes in and locks into the human receptors? Whoa.
Wow.
The hippies were right. There's something going on. There's something going on here, right? So then that was the emergence of the endocannabinoid system. They found out this. They said, no, it can't be that it's just something outside. There has to be some internal process that generates these receptors. And that internal process is the endocannabinoid system.
So we have naturally occurring within our bodies cannabinoids.
Yep. And the biggest one
that's it.
Yeah. And the biggest one that they found, the first one that they found and what they called it was anandamide.
Okay.
That was the first endocannabinoid that was discovered. The second one was called 2-AG. But the reason why they called it anandamide, it stands for the bliss molecule. And what it basically generates, and everybody has anandamide, everybody's very familiar with anandamide, and they call it the runner's high.
Okay.
Why? Because it has anybody who runs and gets exercise, what they experience after a good workout is anandamide.
That is interesting. That's the first I've heard of that, but it makes entire sense.
And so we are endocannabinoid systems.
Wow. And I imagine it's not just humans, but probably in all kinds of animals.
All vertebrates. Okay.
Well, there it is.
Even snakes, all the way up, are endocannabinoid systems. And this is the amazing thing about it. The dose is across all vertebrates, not just human beings. Basically, what I like to call the universal dose of cannabinoids is 10 mgs per 100 pounds of body weight.
Okay.
Nature is not out to confuse or deceive you. Modern pharmaceuticals are. Aha.
That's mind blowing, and And I think, listeners need to kind of rewind that little section and play it again, because it's entirely, it's very important to understand. Now, and this is why we hear, there are a dispensary near me where you can purchase CBD products for your dog and for your cat.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they work.
And the biggest thing where we need to educate ourselves more on is the correct dose. Because what's happening in most cases, the reason why I chose tinctures is that dose can be measured precisely in terms of mgs per ml. And then what I found, basically through trial and error, is that there is a range. What there's got 10 mgs per 100 pounds of body weight is the normal dose. 1 mg per 100 pounds of body weight is the micro dose. 100 mgs per 100 pounds of body weight is the macro dose. And the world, or we, are not always normal. Sometimes we can be slightly imbalanced, and sometimes we can be severely imbalanced. It works in powers of 10. What works in powers of 10? Everything works in nature in powers of 10. And cannabis is part of nature, so it fits in like a glove.
Wow, that's and it's very encouraging, because this is an avenue and a pathway to the research that is just so much needed, and is being thwarted, unfortunately, by the people who are supposed to be looking after our welfare. And
you hit the nail on the head.
And really, this is what VoteProPot is all about. These notions that people are clinging to that have no basis in reality and science, and the science is bearing it out every day, every year. Now, the legal hemp industry has been made possible in the U.S. in large part by the passing of the Farm Bill, something that the government is actually taking a positive step on. And I still find that, talk to us anyway about what distinguishes hemp from marijuana and why it's an important distinction.
Well, it's more a legal distinction now, because at the end of the day, a cannabinoid is a cannabinoid is a cannabinoid, no matter what plant it is derived from. The distinction between what's called hemp and what's called medical marijuana or cannabis is basically in how it grows. People use the distinctions of sativa versus indica versus ruralis to let you know those distinctions are in terms of the form of the plant. Indica is bushy and short and has about a 3-month cycle. Sativa is long and lean and has about a 6-month cycle. And ruralis is small, and so basically the distinctions are very useful for growing, but inside each of those plants, the cannabinoids are the same.
Same stuff.
And so I say cannabinoid's a cannabinoid no matter what plant you derive it from. But where we get into legalization, then we get into power plays and politics. And basically, they made that distinction. They declared legally that hemp is cannabis, and it's all the same classification. If you look at the classification from a phyto, looking at it from external, it's all cannabis sativa. You have cannabis sativa, then it goes ruralis, then it goes sativa, and then it goes indica. They're all part of cannabis sativa. Okay? And so those distinctions of hemp versus cannabis is a legal distinction, basically to control the mechanism.
Specifically to control the level of THC.
That's correct. And this is the other thing that I have an issue with. They're assuming still with this THC is bad, CBD is good. There's no good or bad here. These are all these are all natural chemicals.
No, and I'm laughing because it's almost as if you're telling me something so ridiculously obvious that I just kind of have to chuckle at it.
Yeah, and this is the other thing that I discovered as I went into it and was dealing with CBD. And there's a paper that I published on this, and I had people like Martin Lee and Fred Gardner, who's pioneers in the industry, really good research, basically look at it. And I basically said THC and CBD operate like yin and yang. THC comes into the receptors, your CB1 receptor locks in and activates it. CBD, people say that it's non-psychoactive. That's misleading. It is psycho-deactivating. It is an indirect antagonist of the CB1 receptor, which means a THC locks in and turns it up. CBD surrounds, it's an indirect antagonist. It surrounds the receptor and hugs it down. Okay. But when you look at, one's activating, one's deactivating. What's that like? That's yin and yang.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a balance, and nature loves balance.
And nature is balanced. And if you take too much THC, and I have, what's the solution? CBD. Can you take too much CBD? Absolutely. What happens? And this is a technical term. It's not a good term, but the term is called memory extinction.
Sounds bad.
It sounds bad. Extinction is not a good word. I call it memory release. Why? Because what anxiety is or derives from thinking too much. And that's why people like CBD. It stops the mental activity. Can you take too much? Yes. And what happens when you take too much is you're not thinking as quick. To let you know, there's a lot of people out there that are taking too much CBD and that think they have or emerging Alzheimer's or some sort of disease because they're not thinking as clearly. What's the solution? THC.
That's amazing. That's interesting. And, Al, we are always touting on VoteProPot-Cast a lot of the benefits, but we do not shy away from the warning that THC, CBD, cannabis in general is not without its risks. And, everybody understands that, and they should understand that. There's no panacea here. There are benefits and there are risks, like anything else.
And we can't always take too much of anything. Are you familiar with the term LD50? I
am not, no.
What LD50 is, it's called lethal dose 50. So of the population, 50% of the population, at that level, it's lethal.
Yes. And now I remember. Yes, you reminded me.
And all pharmaceuticals are basically have an LD50. What's the LD50 of cannabis? 15 pounds in 15 minutes.
Whoa.
Okay. Whoa.
So unless a bale of it falls on top of you, it's not going to hurt you.
Well, that's how you would die.
That's how you die.
You die from getting hit by the bale or by being suffocated. But it's impossible to die on cannabis. And that's one of the things I wanted to bring your attention. And one of the problems I have with making cannabis water soluble. Why is that a problem? Cannabis is not water soluble for a reason. Nature knows what it's doing. Why is water solubility an issue? Because you can mainline it. That's why. Okay. Up until now, no one has died of cannabis because they can't put enough into their system. 15 pounds in 15 minutes can't do it to be toxic. But with water solubility, they will be able to.
All right. Well, let's not give anybody any bad ideas.
That's right.
We're talking with Albert Coles of CBD Science, LLC. Al, one of the issues we're very passionate about at VoteProPot is legalizing homegrown in particular, because it's the only really practical way to get the benefits of whole plant and or raw cannabis. Tell us what some of the benefits are of the whole plant or raw cannabis.
Well, basically, raw cannabis, what's called acidic, that's the technical term, acidic cannabinoids, are really where the big medicine is. So what that is simply, it's in a raw state. So it's before you heat it.
Okay. And
with that term, when you have raw cannabis, if you have a flower or bud in your hand, it's not THC, it's THCA.
All right.
It turns into THC when you heat it. It's called decarboxylation.
Right.
That's what actually happens. And that turns THCA into THC. And like most people know, when you have raw food that has more of the vitamins and minerals and living force than when you cook it. Same thing. The natural cannabinoids and there is a paper out there called, or patent out there called medicinal acidic cannabinoids. And it says 3 important things. It says it's the cannabinoids, the acidics, that are real anti-inflammatory. And that was one of the reasons why they're good for seizures. The acidics are more effective for seizures than the neutrals. What does that mean? That means CBDA is more effective for seizures than CBD. Why? Massive anti-inflammatory. But it's anti-inflammatory because it controls the 4 enzymes that give rise to inflammation. And it regulates all 4 of them. Ibuprofen regulates 1. Aspirin regulates 1. CBDA, THCA, CBCA, and CBGA, there's 4 of them.
Right.
Regulate all 4 of the enzymes. And they do so without hurting your stomach. In fact, they have positive effects on the digestive tract. This is huge, and this is where the big medicine is. The problem to date, and most people thought incorrectly, and one pioneer here is a gentleman by the name of William Courtney, Dr. William Courtney, who's been promoting acidics for about 15, 20 years in California. Basically, they thought that in order to extract them, you had to heat it. Not so. Not to heat it. You can either just what they call macerate it, which is letting it sit in a solvent for the appropriate time frame, or you can use ultrasound.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah. And what's that is, it's where do you get ultrasound? How do you get that? You can buy an ultrasound machine for about $35. They're called jewelry cleaners. Okay. And you can take a jewelry cleaner. You can do your jewelry also if you have any. But you can take that little tool. That's one of the things that I'm focusing on now, a tool called the organic medicine machine that allows people in their homes, because one of the things that happened when CBD took off is people were moving from other states like Florida, taking their children and moving to Colorado in order to have access to CBD oil and CBD tinctures. Mm-hmm. And I thought that's crazy because you can make it in the comforts of your home. And that's one of the projects that I'm working on, is creating what I call the organic medicine machine. So everyone at home can make their own tinctures.
They just kind of buy a kit.
There you go.
I love it. I love it. Now, you're also the founder of Alta Hemp Botanicals.
Yes.
Well, tell us about that.
Well, that was what what you described earlier, the legalization of hemp in 2018, right. At the end of the year, the legalization that occurred in California was a sad state of affairs. What happened under legalization, I was a proponent of legalization because I didn't think anyone should ever go to jail for holding a plant. What happened was a bunch of carpetbaggers, the mom and pop operations that were promoting and the real forerunners were taken out by corporate interest, if you will.
Okay.
So it was a sad state of affairs. And when hemp went legal in late 2018, my son and I, the person who originally had ADHD, we went into the hemp business. We formed a company called Alta Hemp Botanicals. And what our focus was CBDA. Why? Because a lot of people are taking CBD right now and not understanding what it's good for and what it doesn't work for. CBD is very good because CBD is an indirect antagonist. It decreases mental activity, and that gives you relief of anxiety. That's a wonderful thing. But it is not really effective for pain. It makes you feel better, but it really doesn't get at the pain. It doesn't
relieve the pain itself, yeah.
What relieves the pain is the acidics, CBDA. And this is another little story I have here. I originally was promoting THCA. And why? Because of what I had mentioned to you, the significant anti-inflammatory benefits. And I went around Northern California, had a first product called Pain Relief, and it was THCA in the correct dose. And I was going around saying, look, you cannot get high from this stuff. So you can take, it has a really wide therapeutic window, and it's not going to have psychoactivity. And unfortunately, there was a small universe of people that kept on coming back to me and describing bizarre psychoactive experiences. And I was basically perplexed at what was going on. I'd get samples back from these people and I'd retest them to see if the THCA had turned to THC, and was focused on that. And I found out that they weren't. So I didn't know what was happening. But the fact was, a certain portion of people were having intense psychoactive experiences. Wow. And what I found out was that THCA turns into an MAOI inhibitor. Are you familiar with what that is?
No.
What that is, that's something that happens in your stomach. And an MAO inhibitor allows the DMT in your stomach, in my stomach, in everyone's stomach to become active. Are you familiar with DMT?
No. I'm not familiar with a lot of these medical terms.
Well, what DMT is, that is in everyone's system. In endocannabinoid systems, it's responsible for your dreams. And what's the active ingredient of something called ayahuasca?
Okay.
So it is an intense psychoactive experience. And so what I found, and this was Dr. Cameron at Steep Hill Labs, that told me about the early research that people are having the conversion happen in their stomach. And it usually happens to people who do not like THC. So it was especially troubling because people who are new to the marketplace or coming in for pain relief suddenly were having severe psychoactive experiences. So that's why it does not happen with CBDA. So that's why we wanted to bring that product to the marketplace, where we could run it to long people and get new people into the market without being subject to severe psychoactivity.
Excellent. Well, how can people get a hold of these products and get in touch with you?
Basically, two ways. You can go to Alta Hemp, try, T-R-Y, Alta.com, and that's where you can find the CBDA product. Okay. And there's also additional significant information there about how CBD works. And the other website that I have is called CBD Science. And on that, you will find deep research, and I update that very frequently, and I write articles and post a lot. And it's also where you'll find information on what's called the organic medicine machine.
Okay, excellent. And we will include both of those links to our show description. Albert Coles, it sure has been a pleasure talking with you. I've learned more today in the last 20 minutes than I have in quite a while about all of these topics. And so thank you for coming on and elucidating us on all of these things.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
And we would love to have you back sometime in the future. And we will, like I say, post those links on our show description so folks can take advantage of those great products.
Pleasure. I would love to be back.
For joining us for Vote Pro Podcast. If you enjoy the show, we'd love to hear from you. Send us your thoughts at VoteProPot.com/contact or send us an email at podcast@VoteProPot.com, and please give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to be part of the show, call our message line at 240-257-2441. Tell your friends about us and be sure to like, follow and share us on social media. Just go to Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn and Twitter and do a search for Vote Pro Pot.
Lock me up, find me good, label me a menace to your quiet neighborhood. I don't grow no plants, the state says I can't. That's not freedom, freedom, freedom. the point. Decide what's best for you and me. Smoke a bowl or roll a joint. Do what you want if it hurts nobody. That's the point. So let's get high. Yeah, you and I. It's called freedom. 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 It's called freedom. 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 Oh yeah. That's the point.